Thursday, February 4th, a regular Board of Ed meeting. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thanks, Gretchen. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Ruth. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Okay, next section is comments from the public. Lucille, did you receive any comments from the public?
No, I did not.
Okay, thank you. Consent agenda, there's only one item on it. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Thanks, Ruth. Second?
Second.
Thanks, Gretchen. All in favor? Any
Aye.
opposed? Okay, that's approved. Reports and recognition. Our first item is Salute to Excellence, which I'm glad to see on the agenda. It's been a while, but Chris Finkelstein started this tradition, and I'm glad to see that we're able to include it this year. So Kevin, do you want to introduce it? I'm not sure what it is tonight.
Yes. So, yeah, like you said, this was one of the neatest things that the board had started to do some time ago and was disrupted as a result of the pandemic. So we're very happy to reintroduce it tonight. We have a short video that I'm going to play for you. And tonight we'll be recognizing a number of our students who excel in the fine and performing arts. So the video will explain who they are and why they're being recognized tonight. But I want to thank Bob and his team for putting this together. So give me 1 second, please. I'm going to share my screen and then we'll play this video for you. Okay.
Good evening. My name is Malcolm Carlin, and I'm one of the instructional leaders for fine and performing arts in the Wilton Public Schools. We are so grateful to the board for setting aside this time to recognize the extraordinary achievements of some of our most talented and motivated students. Kids are doing truly great things in Wilton, and nowhere is that more evident than in our art and music classrooms. Teachers in the fine and performing arts are lucky in that the work our students do is meant by design to be shared and enjoyed by the community. So we take great joy in our opportunities to brag about our students and show you the fruits of their labor. I will now turn you over to the fantastic teachers who've been working with these students, who will introduce our honorees and tell you about their accomplishments.
Hello, I'm Susanna Estes.
And I'm Michelle Courier. We would like to congratulate our students for their achievements in the 2021 Scholastics Art and Writing Awards.
The Scholastic Awards are the nation's longest running, most prestigious recognition program for creative teams.
I would like to congratulate Taylor Philippe for her piece titled Unbuttoned. Taylor won a gold key in the ceramics and glass category and is an American Visions nominee. American Visions is the highest honor, recognizing Connecticut students for proficiency in visual arts. Taylor's work is moving on to nationals, and in March, we will find out if she is a national medalist.
I would like to congratulate Danielle Coltman for a piece titled Growing Hope. The digital painting depicts the inner turmoil of human space. In it, a young boy is peeling away his layers of pain, and in doing so, new hope springs forth in the form of the lilies, a symbol of life and hope. Her piece received an honorable mention in the visual art category.
I would like to congratulate Zoe Erica for her piece titled Koi Tea. Her wheel thrown and hand-painted teapot received an honorable mention in the ceramics and glass category. I would also like to congratulate Colton Hall for his piece titled Roots. He used sodium silicate on his wheel-thrown vase to create texture and received an honorable mention in the ceramics and glass category.
Good evening, members of the Board of Education, Dr. Smith, administration, and staff. Thank you so much for inviting us tonight to honor and recognize some of our outstanding students. My name is Kevin Cotalese, and I'm the director of the high school choirs at Wilton High School. And these three young men, Bryson Addison, Matthew Huang, and Edwin Gregory, continue to astound and amaze us with some of their most recent recognitions. The spring of last year, these three students auditioned for and were accepted into the all-national choir. And that virtual performance and opportunity occurred earlier this year. Well, I'm here to let you know that more recently, these same three students were accepted into the Eastern Division for the National Association of Music Teachers choir. And for a sense of what that means, these are students selected from the states of Maine down to Maryland. And it's especially noteworthy for students from smaller states like Connecticut, Delaware, Rhode Island to make it a group like this, because the number of students selected is based on the size of the state. And so we are so proud and so happy to recognize them. And I want to thank you again for giving us that moment tonight to do that. So once again, congratulations to Edwin Gregory, Bryson Addison, and Matthew Huang. And we will actually leave you with a short performance by Edwin Gregory. Thank you again.
Già il sole dal Gange, già il sole dal Gange, più chiaro sfavilla, più chiaro sfavilla, più chiaro sfavilla. E per giorni stilla dell'alba che piange, dell'alba che piange, dell'alba che piange, dell'alba che piange. Già il sole dal Gange, già il sole dal Gange, più chiaro sfavilla, più chiaro sfavilla, più chiaro sfavilla. Col raggio dorato, in gemmo di stelo, in gemmo di stelo, in gemmo di stelo. I gliastri del cielo dipinge nel prato, dipinge nel prato, dipinge nel prato, dipinge nel prato. Col raggio dorato, in gemmo di stelo, in gemmo di stelo, in gemmo di stelo.
And that's our salute to excellence. We have Malcolm Carlin with us. I'm sorry, Malcolm, I didn't realize you were on the panel before. Is there anything you'd like to add?
I snuck in at the last second. Thank you very much, of course, for giving us this time to recognize these really excellent students. And while I have the floor for just a moment, I'll take this time to thank, these were all high school students, of course, but I'd like to thank their elementary and middle school teachers for providing the foundation that allowed this to happen. So thank you to the board, thank you to the elementary and middle school music teachers. Appreciate, and art teachers, pardon me.
Well, thank you, Malcolm. It's just been terrific. You know, it's literally just what the doctor ordered. You know, it's so great to see it on a winter's night. So thanks for that note of cheer, and the accomplishments are amazing, and the creativity, of course, is outstanding. And thanks to all the FAPA teachers, and as you so rightfully noted, the K-8 teachers before them. So it takes a village, as they say. So anyway, so thank you. That's such a great way to start our meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Malcolm. Thanks, company. Great. And so we'll be back with more salutes to excellence as we move through the remainder of this year. It really is always a high point of every meeting we have when we're able to showcase our students.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. We could just substitute them sometimes for the entire agenda. Sorry. Okay, the next item is the board chair's report. All right, I just have a few comments. I know that these have been tough times recently and an already kind of tough year. And having to move to remote learning only for a period at our high school, the need to quarantine a team at Middlebrook, postponing the January 28th date for the 4-day Middlebrook learning model, they've all been frustrating. As a board, we are anxious to get our kids back to in-person as much as possible because nothing replaces the live interaction between students and teachers. Tonight, we will hear good news on that front that will make many people happy and relieved. As we welcome the positive report tonight, let's also remember that the ups and downs we have been through this year will probably continue. We just don't know what's around the corner with this virus. Let's also remember people experience the decisions about learning models differently. For some, we're not moving fast enough. For others, we're moving too fast. So when we experience the next series of challenges, let's remember we're a community that's at its best when we work together. Our board member, Glenn Hemmerly, is not able to attend tonight's meeting because of an illness. He asked me to convey his thanks to the entire administration and staff for their continued outstanding efforts this year. He's had time since he's been ill to be watching a lot of news reports, and he's described the many cities and areas in the country in which students have not been to school at all this year. Although recognizing we're not perfect, Glenn wanted to point out that we've been doing a pretty good job overall when you put us in a larger picture. The rest of the board, I know, certainly echoes Glenn's thanks to our outstanding administration, faculty, and staff, which leads to my final note. Let's take a moment to single out our superintendent. Dr. Smith has done an amazing job in the midst of this pandemic. His clear communication and ability to listen to all constituents have inspired trust. His careful planning and attention to detail have ensured the smooth implementation of our learning models. In addition to academics, his concern for the social and emotional needs of students during this crisis has ensured an emphasis on building relationships, no matter what the learning model. So we thank you, Dr. Smith, again, for your leadership. Just have a small criticism. You're not home free here. On our snow day this week, just want to point out that you did not provide a music video like our neighboring town superintendent did. So there's always room for improvement. So anyway, so thank you.
I think it could have been improved by having his Board of Education participate.
Yeah, the board video would be, yeah, okay. Not an unsalute to excellence. Okay, superintendent's report.
I have no report for you this evening.
We'll hear from you later, I know. Okay, have any committees met since last meeting?
No.
Okay.
Nope.
All right, well, that brings us to a learning model update.
Great. All right, well, on to, I think, some very encouraging news. So earlier today, I spoke with Barry Bogle, and then he communicated a follow-up in writing. And so I'm very pleased to report that we are able to move forward with our reopening plans, our all-in return to school plans for Middlebrook School beginning next Monday, February 8th. So that's really, really very positive news for all of us. Barry made a couple of notes in his email assenting to our plan. First, he requested that we develop a plan to conduct surveillance testing. And so this is something I think he must have been doing some thinking and some reading about. And so as an additional mitigation strategy, he requested that we do that. So we have been for some months now, investigating surveillance testing. So I'll continue with those plans and go forward and come back to the board with some possibilities for that in very short order. Barry also requested that we garner written commitment from parents that they'll report any and all familial positive cases and exposures. And so I think there too, his interest is just in working together as a community to do everything in our power collectively to mitigate the spread of this virus. His third request was that our staff members, as they have been doing, maintain and increase their vigilance and enforcement of mask wearing and social distancing. So that's something we can certainly do. And the administrators reinforce that message daily. And our staff has been fabulous in their vigilance. And I would say our students as well. We've had very, very, very high compliance. So I see no question or concern there. And then his last note was just to be mindful, as Debbie noted, we're really operating week to week here. And so if we happen to see a spike in cases, we may have to pull back from the all-in-person model to a hybrid or to remote, depending on whether or not those conditions change and we see more a significant increase in COVID activity. So the plan is then to begin with grade 6 on Monday. Grade 6 will be all in, and then on Monday, grades 7 and 8 will be in hybrid. On Tuesday, February 9th, both grade 6 and grade 7 will be all in, and 8th grade will be hybrid. On Wednesday, the 10th, everybody in the district will be remote on that shortened day. And then on Thursday, the 8th grade will join the 6th and 7th by being all in. And then the Friday the 12th is also a shortened day, and then that leads us into the February break. Last night, Principal Higgins and his team conducted a forum for parents to walk them through the proposed plan. So I'd like to thank him as well as his team. That includes Toby Alex, Nicole Curzay, Damian Whelan, Janet Nobles, Terry Ellis, Michael Collins, Michael Gordon, and Paul Schluntz were all on the call and contributed to the explanation of the plan. We also had Dr. Mackin available with us last night, and she is always very informative, and I think the parents who participated found her to be very helpful. So with all that being said, I'd like to have Jory just take a few minutes and top line for the board the key elements of that plan, and then perhaps we can dig into some questions, and I have just a couple of other pieces to share with you on the learning model update.
Thanks, Kevin. I'll just add one other panelist that we should also publicly thank is Chandra Ring, our PTA president, joined us on that panel a little bit. You stole my thunder in thanking all those folks, but appreciate it to all of them, and to you, Kevin, too, for joining us in that. It was a nice setup because we shared the presentation with parents ahead of time, gave them an opportunity to ask questions, which we then embedded in the presentation or just frankly at the end broke up, answered them. To high point some of the things that are in the plan, and I know board members who are parents, so hopefully you had a chance to go through it as well. The high points would be that the mitigation strategy, one of the aspects of the hybrid plan that we've been working on so far is that it's been a great dress rehearsal next week, and that the students have been fantastic. They've really been such troopers about following the regulations we're throwing at them to make sure that they wear their masks, that they sanitize their hands, that they stay apart from each other as best they can. When we go into the cafeteria, making sure that they keep their distance, especially when they take their mask off to eat. And then we make sure that we're cleaning the chairs and the tables as they leave, making sure that the space is ready for the next group to come in. We also had a group come in and check the ventilation of all of these spaces just to make sure that the airflow was what it needed to be. And what was nice about that report is the way they operate is they base it on occupancy. And what was nice to hear was that the occupancy that we have in the gymnasiums and the cafeteria where we have the kids having their lunches, it's set for greater than the number of students that we ever have in those spaces. So it was very, you might say, refreshing to hear that. So it was good to hear that. The movement in the building is something I know parents were concerned about, and we spent some time in the presentation last night talking about that. I think I likened it to a rail yard. You know, when you see a whole train pull out while another one pulls in, and that sort of thing. So it's orchestrated quite carefully. Our kids are quite practiced at it. So we would imagine that when we bring all the kids back, we're just going to continue that practice. The other thing is that the board heard weeks ago that there were some concerns from the Middlebrook staff, and I just wanted to share a little bit about that. That the staff have been part of the plan, part of organizing and creating this reentry plan, and they are committed to making sure that this plan is right and that it's going to work. They want to make sure, we all do, want to make sure that everyone's going to be safe. And the staff have really been outstanding partners in checking every detail, making sure that we're not overlooking anything, making sure that we're double checking to make sure that nothing is overlooked or left to chance. And I think that's really what was expressed, not only in that survey that was shared by Mission Exagi, but also the message that was contained therein about folks being concerned and nervous, partly because they didn't know what the plan was. Now that they've had an opportunity to hear about the plan and talk about some of the specific details, I think that's really appeased some of the concern there. And I think the other thing that we tried to share last night was just that embedded throughout the whole plan is really making sure we're checking in on the well-being of everybody involved. It's so important to respectfully acknowledge that this is hard. This is hard for adults, let alone how hard it is for our kids. And we just make sure that we pause every now and then and check in with the kids to make sure that they're okay. And we want to check in and make sure that their social emotional well-being is intact. We'll do the same thing for our staff as well. And the last point I want to make is just that a point that I made last night is that this is not school the way we're used to. And we don't want to pretend that this is going to be school of, you know, February 2020 and before. This is going to be different. It's going to look different. And we need parents, we need students, we need a staff to come together to make it work. And along the lines of, Kevin, what you just talked about, that written commitment from parents, it's really going to require a continued commitment from everybody involved. And I'm quite optimistic that that'll work. So thanks for the time to share that. Happy to answer the questions if there are any.
I have a couple questions. Gretchen, you want to go first?
Of course.
Quick question, Jory, just to clarify, cohort A and B is not going forward. It'll be all of 6th grade going on Monday, and then all of 7th grade on Tuesday, and all of 8th grade on Thursday. Is that working?
You've got it right.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. You know, I think the thing to just be clear to parents, and we've tried to be in my Friday letters, but then also even tonight, is to be clear that on Monday, it's just the 6th grade coming all in, but cohort A for 7th and 8th grade are also coming in. Then on Tuesday, it's all of 6th grade and 7th grade, but just cohort A of 8th grade. And then by Thursday, it's everybody. And that, of course, is taking into account we're going to still have some families based on their own circumstance are going to need to be remote.
Thanks.
Jory, my favorite question, how are we doing on wipes?
Hi, Jen. We're doing all right. We're going through an awful lot of them. You know, that was something that a couple of the teachers who spoke last night shared, just how great the kids have been, that they walk in, they know they're going to grab a wipe and they're going to wipe down the space that they're going to work at, and doing well. And I give public thanks to Jose Figueroa for always making sure we have enough cases of those handy for our folks in the building.
Okay. My other question, the forum from last night, if it's not already, will it be posted for people who couldn't join last night to see it?
Yes, we did record it. And so I'm not quite sure how the mechanics of that work. I think, Kevin, you have the recording at this point, and then we'll make sure it's put on the website.
Yeah, we'll typically post it. So we'll make sure it's up. We can probably put it up by tomorrow.
Okay. And my next question is to you, Kevin. The surveillance testing that Barry was talking about, Is that for staff and students that he's looking for? Is it just staff or just students, or did he clarify?
He didn't clarify, but my presumption is that he'd like to have surveillance testing for staff and students. So I have a bit more investigation to do, first about process. When we were investigating surveillance testing, as you know, we were thinking originally just staff. So
Right.
there are a number of things that we have to work through in order to understand the scope and then also the duration.
Okay.
And I guess just to follow up on Jen's question, because I had a similar question in relation to the written commitment and also to the surveillance. Is it just for Middlebrook, or is kind of that written commitment, to parents at large?
Yeah, I don't know why it would be just contingent at Middlebrook. I certainly understand and appreciate the desire as part of moving Middlebrook back, but in fairness to all of us who live and work in this community, my intention would be to invite all parents to make that commitment.
No, that would be my inclination, or as well, but I was just wondering. And the surveillance testing as well, was he just focusing on Middlebrook because it's an older group of children? The 10 plus, is that what, or?
Correct. Yeah, we would do, I think that the question there, and, I'll have to, actually sit down and have a conversation with him so I can understand better. But my initial understanding is, yes, we're going to start at Middlebrook. And then as we, advance our plans to bring back more students at the high school, we would probably propose to do surveillance testing for high school age students as well and staff there.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Well, I think,
Sorry,
yeah, go ahead.
Thank you so much to the staff. The last night was awesome. Having Dr. Mack in there was great. And I know the kids are ecstatic. So thank you so much to everyone at Middlebrook who made this happen. Hopeless, very hoping that this all works through. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks to everyone. Jory, can you talk a little bit about the faculty, a little bit more in terms of, I was able to come in when Dr. Mackin was touring, and also when Barry Bogle was touring, and teachers were part of that tour. And I didn't hear all their questions because I was sort of at the back of the group. But my sense is that perhaps those visits helped, and having their questions answered. Do you think the general flavor is, as much changed then since we heard last?
I think every one of those visits really contributed towards folks feeling a little more comfortable of what's coming. And, it wasn't a filtered response either through me or through Dr. Smith that they were talking to the medical professional directly. And, we did not run interference in any shape. In fact, folks that I knew that were a little more concerned, I made sure they joined us as we walked about. I think you saw that, because I want to make sure some of the folks that were most concerned because of their own family dynamic and issues with health concerns that they live with or that they see regularly or that they care for on a regular basis. They just want to make sure that they're not putting their own family at any kind of risk. And I think part of the reassurance was, the mitigation strategies in place are working, and to have both Barry and Chrissy Mackin come through and share just how important it is that we adhere to those strategies and that they are working, I think reassured folks quite a bit.
Okay, great. That's great. So we've reached this point. I guess we don't need to vote or anything as a board. We've already done that. We've approved it, pending approval by Barry of the target date. So it looks like we've reached it, and I think it's all good news. One more question, Jory. For parents who might be on the fence about, feeling like they want to send their students back for 4 days in a denser environment, do you think the forum sort of helped reassure people? I'll just give one quick example. It really helped me. Before, I had toured, one of the emails we had gotten was, very much concerned about the cafeteria and the gymnasium where kids eat, and, the kids would have their masks off and there'd be twice as many kids. So I was envisioning, twice the density. And it was very reassuring to see that, no, you've already got plenty of space. So it's more kids, but they will not be any closer than they are now. They're just being double the space. So that was, things like that kind of really make a difference, or might have made a difference. So I'm sure your forum got at that and more points. So I just wonder, do you have a sense of how many will kind of want to come back versus how many may still be reticent to?
I certainly haven't surveyed them again since the last survey, and I shared those results that
right. Okay.
15% that said they were going to go all remote. But I also know that was before we shared what the plans were, before parents really knew what it was going to look like in the building, before Dr. Mackin and Barry Bogle had come through the building. So I would imagine folks that were on the fence. I happen to know one family who was on the fence, sent me a text last night and said, that really helped, thank you.
Yeah, right. So, okay.
There was one, but that's maybe an example of folks that weren't quite sure, but wanted to hear what the plan was, hear what we were going to do, and understand that, we're professionals and we want to keep everyone safe too. This isn't a case of hiding anything from families or thinking that we're doing anything that would put anybody in harm's way. We want to make sure that it's done right as well.
Yeah, Jory, a related question that came up last night that I thought some of our staff members answered very, very beautifully was in response to the concerns by some of our remote learners who have to be full remote. And concern was, with more kids in the building, is there going to be less attention to the remote learners, or is their learning going to suffer? So I would just ask Jory to kind of summarize the comments that some of our teachers, provided an answer to that, and they've been doing a really good job of keeping tabs on our remote learners.
I guess the way to capture it is I liken it to having a classroom of 24 kids in your room. And if one's in the back right corner, what's the difference in back right corner or on a screen in terms of making sure that they're giving personal attention to every child in the class? And it's something that the staff have been so practiced at, really in terms of remote learning since last March. And this year, certainly in the hybrid, having kids live in person and on the camera, and having had the opportunity to go in and observe teachers this year, they're creating magic. It's amazing to me how they make it look so easy, so effortless when, I know everybody on this call here knows darn well how difficult it is to try to manage that, and making sure that the children feel not an ounce of stress about it, just to know that it's just this effortless practice, or what looks like effortless practice, but it's quite skilled efforts to make sure that kids, whether they're on the screen or in the room, are getting the attention they deserve and need from their teachers. And making sure that the children also understand that as far as the lessons are concerned, I was in a classroom today where the teacher let them know, all right, I'm going to walk around and check on the kids here. Those of you on Zoom, make sure you unmute yourself and just shout out to me, let me know. So it's things like that, just demonstrate the routines that are in place. And the children know that, the staff know it, they reinforce it for the kids. They're constantly complimenting the children to let them know that they're doing it right and doing it very well, and respecting the fact that it's hard for them to do, it's different for them to do it this way. And Nicole Kersey, my partner Dean, even gave us these stickers every week. We can do hard things, and we continue to do that. And both the staff and the kids are doing just that right now. I'd love to make one other comment, and that is that, we said this last night, I want to say it again tonight, and that is, if you have the slightest hint that you think your child is not well, please keep them home, because that's one way that we're going to keep the spread down. Make sure that you are checking their temperature regularly, you are asking them and checking for those symptoms, no matter how mild, and making sure that if they aren't well, or that you're not sure that they're feeling well. Parents know when their children aren't feeling well. You can look them straight in the eyes and know, and make sure that you keep them home. We're not in a place now where we can risk sending them to school and then find out later that maybe they're not feeling well and they have something that might spread. So that's another part of the partnership that needs to continue.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And kids don't have to be absent in the same way anymore. You know, if they feel sick but well enough to pay attention on Zoom, you know, they're not going to miss the day in the traditional sense. So there's a benefit there as well.
Right.
Tori,
So-
quick question. Would it be beneficial at all to send a survey tomorrow? I mean, and I'm just throwing this out there. Are your teachers prepared for like who's coming in on Monday? They have a good grasp of the kids that will be coming in versus the kids that will be remote?
You know, Manny, good question. I think that where we're sitting now is that we recognize that this is going to be pretty fluid. I'm sure there are folks that want to let this start and let it happen, and then they're just going to kind of wait it out and see, and then they might send their children in. We have a cadre of folks that we know that are going to be remote, certainly right now, that they've communicated that to us. And I think there are still others that they're going to kind of wait a little bit. So I'm not sure what a survey would tell us, except that that's what they're saying on February 5th compared to what it might be in 2 weeks, which might change. And I want folks to know that if they do want to change their plan, that if they're deciding today or tonight that as of next week they're going to be remote, and at some point down the line they do want to change their mind, that's okay. We just want to make sure that they reach out to their school counselor and we'll walk them through that process, because it could be up to 2-3 weeks before they would be able to come in if they've been traveling, if we want to make sure that the bus is still aligned for their trip, if they're going to be taking the bus, want to make sure the classes are all set, because if we've made any movements within the classes, we want to make sure that we're not overloading any classes.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I was just trying to make it as easy for the teachers as possible. And then Kevin, the written commitment, can you talk a little bit about what that will look like and what that will entail?
Yeah, I have to, tomorrow morning when I meet with the principals and the district administrators, we're going to talk through that. But I think something simple, you know, at least conceptually, like a parent pledge, you know, with a couple of simple sentences. It was a concept that we had talked about early on, and just were, you know, uncertain about how powerful it would be. So I think that's my initial thinking at the moment. I'll talk with, you know, some of the administrators tomorrow morning about it. And then, you know, we'll also, I think, you know, the spirit of what Barry's asking for is, you know, probably most important. And it's just this understanding that, you know, we really are all in this together and have a shared commitment to keep each other safe.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great idea.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe it could be more inclusive, you know, in terms of, like, to Jory's point about kids staying home and, you know, if they feel sick, just reminders, you know, just use it as a reminder sheet as well.
Mm-hmm.
So any other comments, questions? All right, well, we know that I'm sorry, go ahead. I can't see who's talking. Jen?
Yeah, that's me. It's okay.
No, go ahead.
Jory, I just wanted to say thank you. I was switching to my computer and couldn't get off mute fast enough, but that's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen.
Well, and we all echo Jen's sentiments. We know the hundreds, you know, if not thousands of hours that have gone to get us to this point by the faculty and all the planning that's gone on, and everybody's involved. So we're just really happy to be able to say next week that K-8 is 4 days in. That's tremendous. So that's a great thing.
And I know in my role, I get to be the face tonight and accept those things, but you're absolutely right, Deb. There's an awful lot of people that made this work. It's been a great team effort, and an awful lot of folks that have put a lot of time, energy, and sweat equity into this to make it right.
And of course, the partnership with the parents has been tremendous throughout this whole sort of kind of periods of ups and downs and waiting. So we appreciate everybody's patience, everybody's partnership, and everybody's support and understanding. And I can't, you know, the kids are going to probably so excited to come back. And on my brief tour that I was, you know, able to participate in, it's just so refreshing to see them in action, you know, and to see happy middle school students. And I was really amazed at their compliance. You know, I know it's been a while, you know, maybe it's just sort of baked in now. But, you know, they're just, you know, they just automatically shift to the right side of the hallway. You know, they sit naturally into, you know, their places in the cafeteria, which are not socially, you know, particularly natural, but they make it work. And so, you know, they have been resilient, and they're sticking to it and keeping their eye on the balls. So I just appreciate their spirit.
Agreed.
So, all right, so thank you. And again, we don't have to vote because we already said we approved the plans. We were just waiting for the final date. So now that's come. So thank you.
Great. And then just under this agenda item, the last note I would make is that we did send questions to Barry Bogle and First Selectwoman Lynn Vanderslice. We did receive a response, I think either earlier in this week or at the end of last week, which I forwarded on to you. Hopefully you've had a chance to read those responses. If you have additional questions, please feel free to forward them, and I'll be happy to send them on. If you kind of saw the content, you know, we were asking questions about benchmarks and the like, and the content that was provided was content that I think we've seen before. The benchmarks that Barry uses are the benchmarks that are recommended by the State Department of Public Health as well as the State Department of Education. So it was helpful to see that clarification. The other question that I thought that was important that just needed to be named was this wondering about, you know, what can we project for the rest of the school year? And as I think we could all, you know, reasonably suspect, the environment is so fluid right now. The response there was there's really no way to project for the entire school year. It's kind of a week to week, ever evolving environment. So I just did want to make the point that we did ask those questions. We got those answers. You have them. And if there are additional, we can forward them on, and I'm sure we'll get a timely response.
Yeah, we appreciate the time that went into compiling the response. Is that, can we post that on our website? It's a neat enough format, right? I got a question about that today. We're just, you know, just wondering about the follow-up. So that would be helpful.
We'll do that tomorrow.
Okay, perfect.
Great, and that's all I have on this topic.
Okay. All right, so the next item is reviewing our COVID-19 expenses year to date and perhaps projected for the rest of the year, the impact on this year's budget, what we will need to do to address the shortfall, and a little bit of information about where we are with reimbursement, the different grants, and you know, can we predict the future of grants? So Anne, that's Anne, or Kevin, go ahead.
Yeah, so we sent you some slides. I'm going to share my screen, and then Anne, you can just, if you want to just walk us through, and we'll just, you know, take questions along the way here. Great. So the first is just a breakdown by category.
So as you can see from these, it was broken down into which areas that we needed expenditures on: response and preparedness, technology, the LLC, which is the Learning Commons Library, SPED, other, and HR. HR being small stipends on it. On the right-hand side, what we have are the costs that are related to the grants that we had received. The ESSER grant, if you remember, that's the Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. And then we had 74,000 of expenditures for that. And the Coronavirus grant, which is a state grant, is the Board of Ed portion of the CRF grant. And to date, we spent 122,000 of that approximately, with another 10 to spend. On the bottom, you'll see we have staffing. Again, this is through the end of June 2021 of our projected staffing needs expenditures.
Right, and those staff members, if you go back, they were this accounts for what we were projecting, and asked the board for approval back in, I think it was the end of August. So that dollar amount counts for the world language teacher we hired at Middlebrook, the 0.5 PE teacher, the campus supervisors that are at both the Wilton High School and Middlebrook, as well as the cafeteria aides that are at Middlebrook and Cider Mill, and then the 7 custodians that we added across the district to pick up the additional cleaning needs. Move on to the next one. Yep.
This gives you a snapshot of where we are in summary. So the 1.288 is the non-personnel, which we just discussed with the different technology, supplies, things that we needed, and then the personal cost of the 1.2 that Kevin just reviewed. So our total expenditures to date from the start of COVID is $2.4 million of expenditures through June of 2021. To date, we're receiving the 132 in the BOE CRF grant, and we have received the ESSER 1 of the 74,000. Prior year expenditures, that were the coverages that we put in the fiscal year 20 budget. If you remember, we went through that process. So we encumbered some of the items in at that time. So they're covering the expenses currently going through. And the 450,000 is what we believe we can, from freezing our budget, the line items like we had savings in our insurance line, not medical, liability insurance. Obviously hard book covers, books, dues and subscriptions for things that aren't being used, field trips, officials, things like that, that we won't use the whole amount. So we expect that savings. And we did receive for the first quarter, second quarter of the state, $97,000. We're still currently waiting to see what FEMA from July through December we may get. And also we're wondering, and there could be a second round of CRS, which is the Corona Relief State one. On the bottom in yellow, you'll see the pending ESSER grant 2. So the CARES Act now has a new grant that's come out for us, again, secondary, elementary and secondary school emergency relief of $345,000. We just got the clarification, how long it's in there, and we're trying to now delineate what are the expenditures that will go against that. So that may go into this year or may go into next year based on what our needs are. So with these numbers, we're projecting a deficit range because obviously we don't know yet what other relief we might get. So it's going to go, as you can see from the bottom, about 600,000 up to about 900, just under $1 million, depending on whether we get grants or not, or how we use the ESSER 2 grant. So, as time goes on, we're hopefully another month or so, we'll find out from FEMA where we stand on those grants from them, and then state as well.
Great. So these numbers could come down even further if those other grants or FEMA reimbursements materialized.
Right.
Great. And so just to give the board.
Kevin, can I just ask a question? It's a very small amount, but on the first slide, COVID costs, the coronavirus grant looks like it was 121.
Yes.
And then on this slide, it looks slightly different. It's not important, but it is. I just want to make sure we're talking about the same grant.
It is, Debbie. The up above, that's purely what we have spent to date on that grant. And what we're getting is 132,000. The other 10%, the 10,000 difference between those two dollar amounts are going to come in with the staff level that we're going to transfer to the grant. So we're just showing the expenditure up above, but the true revenue coming in that'll offset that in the staffing.
Okay, and then the ESSER 2 grants that's pending as in you might get it. It needs approval, like we're thinking about it, and who's in charge of that?
So that has been published as our dollar amount that we're getting. Again, I believe it was based on Title I funds for the state on what you were given, and the pot was a little bit bigger. So the difference in this one is the criteria of what you can spend it on. So we're working through that right now. The state had a call for all the towns and cities to get on to answer all the questions on what this grant can be. So it's brand new to us on what we're going to do with the grant.
Okay, I was on another call with some board chairs, and some of the questions are, can it be used for remedial support education, like people were asking about summer school or after school tutoring, those kinds of programs. So have you heard that question?
And the answer is yes. There are 4 different categories of expenditures in which these funds can be applied. The state at some point very shortly is supposed to open up an application, and then we would kind of stipulate what we're proposing to use the funds for. And what we need to have a little bit more conversation about here is, do we want to take the entire allotment and apply it retroactively to expenses that we've already incurred, or do we want to pull some pieces out of that and put them toward new expenses that we may incur in the next year? So whether it's summer school or some other remedial programs or something else. So that's a decision that we'll have to make. And I think I'm interested in waiting a little bit on that to see if there are any additional reimbursements that materialize through the FEMA applications that we've made.
Yeah, so it really, yes. So Anne, do you have a sense of what our FEMA possibility is? Like just if all the stars aligned and we got the reimbursement that we hope for, what would that equal?
We could get about 250, 275 if. I'm not crazy giving a number because I'm not sure what they're going to give, but that's what we've submitted so far.
Around 250?
At 250, 275. We're going back and forth on a couple of items with them.
Okay.
But I haven't seen indications from other towns yet, but they're still open for us to submit. So that's why we're waiting.
And if we put in, say, 250, is that where the 75% kicks in, reimbursement rate, or is 250 the 75% of what we're applying for?
Well, the 250 is what I'm applying for. It would be 75% of that number.
Okay. All right. So we wouldn't receive 250. We would receive 75% of it.
Yes. Correct.
Got it. Okay. All right. I'm sorry.
And then hope the state makes up that other 25%, correct?
If they open up the CRF fund again.
Okay.
For the next, that one shut December 2020. They have talked about a possible another one, but we haven't got any indication yet on it, details.
Okay.
Kevin, has there been any more talk about when we have to decide about a budget for next year?
No, the last I heard, I think that was, I don't know if that was in an update from Lynn, but we're expecting an executive order at some point. And do you have any more information?
No, I know the states, so the governor's getting pressured because towns want to know. So within the next 2 weeks or so, we set the normal budget deadlines as we're required by charter, but we're hoping within the next 2 weeks, we'll get clarification on his executive order.
Okay.
Okay, good.
Great. Any other questions on this slide? Next couple are just some additional details about what some of the funds that went to. So under response and preparedness, these are all the material kinds of things. So desks, we put all of our art teachers and other teachers on carts, so we needed some additional rolling carts. We purchased miles of plexiglass for nurse's office, the LLC's main offices. Our maintenance workers also made several hundred sneeze guards. We purchased additional sneeze guards. Under HVAC, as you know, we had a commissioning agent look at our system all through the districts back in the summertime. We also brought in an air balancer. Most recently, we brought in an air balancer to take another look at Middlebrook. We purchased the recommended air filters that were recommended by the State Department of Public Health, and then all of the various PPE, gloves, sanitizer, wipes, you name it, we've purchased it. We used some thermometers during the ESY program in the summer, plenty of cleaning materials, and then music PPE. So these are skin covers for the various horns we have, masks that are designed to allow a player to cover his mouth or her mouth while playing the instrument. And then we also needed to buy additional storage containers to store the furniture we couldn't use And we purchased a number of boxes to store items as well. We've spent significant sums in technology. This year we had to pay for the Zoom upgrade, the Zoom virtual lab. Additional funds were directed toward Chromebook repair. And then when we were shut down, we were shipping items to families. And so there were some charges we incurred for UPS. We added additional phone lines and then paid for an upgrade so we could port phones from here in the district to people's houses while we were shut down. Under the LLC, and all kinds of expenditures around additional ebooks, training opportunities, video editing software. We enhanced our digital safety management program and purchased a range of new licenses. The significant expenditure in SPED was the Presence Learning software program that's been so successful in enabling our staff to provide teletherapy to our students. We also bought some clear masks for some of our SPED staff. At Middlebrook, we purchased ukuleles so the teachers could alter their classes and allow students to still learn music. And then we also provided some additional time this past summer for staff to do training and preparation. I think that's it.
Okay. I can't wait till FEMA looks at the bill for ukuleles. Sorry. I actually on my tour, I saw a pile of ukuleles, with students' names on it, et cetera. Who knew they were going to come back? I think they were a thing in the 1950s. So it's, but anyway, that's very creative. So, all right. So, will you come back to us with sort of a recommendation for a timeline? Because at some point, if we're facing a deficit, we will need to go to the Board of Finance to request an additional appropriation. So, I know that we want to wait for more information, but I don't want to push it, to have it happening in the middle of a budget process either. So I don't know when the best time to do it is, but you'll have a recommendation for us.
We will. I think we're just in terms of process. I think we'll rely on Ann to the best that she's able to get information from the FEMA folks to see if indeed we're going to hear a little bit more. But we'll come back to the board with this as an action item to request a particular appropriation from the Board of Finance.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And is there anything else we need to know, or Kevin? All the expenses are basically out there. We don't anticipate, rather than minor incremental things, any new significant needs.
I don't think there'll be any significant needs, but as we gear up to bring more students back to the high school, we have to purchase additional sneeze guards or maybe an odd desk or two. So, but I don't imagine those will be large sums.
Kevin, what about the surveillance testing?
Yeah, that we'll have to cost out and see. When we were projecting what it might cost to do a single school at a week, we were looking at the potential for maybe $10,000 or $12,000 per week. So that in the meantime, there are a couple of other companies that are also doing this. So I just have a little bit more legwork to do, and then we ought to talk to Barry and Lynn about maybe sharing the cost.
And are you thinking, when you say 10 to 12,000 per week, are you like, what percentage of students and or staff are you thinking?
That initial projection was really based on staff. So we'll have to, I think there are a couple of things that have to happen here. One, we need to get a sense of, whether or not the cost is the same. When I looked at it a month ago, the company that we spoke to was suggesting it was about, $10, $12 per person per test. So.
Right, but also we were looking at matrix testing, so it doesn't demand as many follow-up tests. So we have to weigh that again in terms of cost benefit and logistics and all of that.
Yeah, even if the matrix testing is available, that was the other big question, is that the one lab that was doing that
was going to get overwhelmed.
the major city that was in line in front of us, right? So I think the
Okay.
summary line is
Got
that there are questions that we have to answer here in the very short term. But I think, Mandy, to your point, yes, this will be an additional cost.
And you're thinking at $10 to $12 per person for testing all the staff weekly, once a week?
If it would be voluntary.
Got it. No, I'm just trying to figure out. I've now
Well,
found
I think at some point, Mandy, we had talked about doing it every other week, but just for faculty. So if you start factoring kids into, we'll have to see what Barry, what he's expecting there.
Yeah, I'm just looking at, I've found myself in that industry now, so I'm just looking at the economics of it.
Okay.
To do some more research to help out.
Great, thanks. Yeah, that would be helpful. I know that you brought up the concept, much earlier in the fall, and at that point, it wasn't on anybody's radar in terms of public health. The State Department of Public Health, wasn't picking up on that concept at that point.
Yeah, and Kevin, what about the Binax testing, the antigen testing? I know there's some questions about the accuracy on it, but the price point is right within where we need to be.
But the Binax testing we're actually using, so Dr. Mackin's office is sponsoring that for us. So when we have a student or staff member who is symptomatic, they can call Dr. Mackin's office and go down. They can.
But what about the question of using surveillance testing?
Yeah.
If much faster and cheaper?
Well, the fact that the state has paid for it would answer the cost question. I'm not reliant on that as a surveillance test. So that's something we could look into as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, we all know it's not as accurate, but if you do it regularly and you're doing it for surveillance purposes, maybe that's good enough kind of thing.
The Binax test was intended for symptomatic people only, so I don't think it would meet our needs in terms of surveilling.
No? Okay.
Yeah, Kevin, we should look into that since the CDC and HSS both released. There's not many tests that are for asymptomatic patients, so it's something that we should look into because both of them said that most of these tests can be used in both asymptomatic and symptomatic. But it's something that Barry can look into, but just anyhow, for another time. But I think it's great we're looking into surveillance testing.
Okay. All right. So anything more on COVID expenses?
No.
Thanks, Ann, for compiling it. And let's just keep us abreast, of course, on any grant possibilities and reimbursement possibilities. Okay. We had an action item on an earlier agenda, but that needs to be postponed. So we'll see that come back in terms of the Middlebrook building project closeout. Not quite ready for tonight. So that brings us to some next meeting dates. Kevin, we had kept February 11th, just thinking as a maybe. Will we need that meeting?
If it's okay, let's hold it for now.
Hold it? Okay. All right, so we'll do that. And then February 25th. Okay, so that brings us to comments from the public. Lucille, are there any submitted since the start of the meeting?
No, there are not.
Okay. All right, well, that brings us to the end of our agenda, and therefore we're adjourned. So thank you, everybody, and good news about Middlebrook. So thanks for everybody's hard work again. Thank you, and good night.
Thank you.
Right.